And welcome back to Southern Showdown, powered by JKR Baseball. On this podcast, PBR Texas Director Brandon Goins, PBR Louisiana Director Alex Armand, along with myself, will be discussing high school baseball in Texas and in Louisiana. Today's episode will strictly be Louisiana high school baseball content with Alex. Alex, pumped to have you back on the show here today. How are you doing?
Good, man. Pumped to be here, and yeah, like you said, it's just Louisiana today. So yeah, I think it's a good time for us to do just Louisiana because there's definitely a lot going on with the end of the regular season and the playoffs starting up. So yeah, excited, exciting time of year.
Yeah, good numbers. What was it, 2 weeks ago when it was all three of us on for episode number one? So I'm excited to, it's going to be our first episode on that YouTube platform as well, like we just talked about.
Right.
So I'm excited to see the growth here for Southern Showdown and just, get more and more listeners from Texas and from Louisiana. But first segment I want to dig into, not Louisiana baseball, just baseball in general, that new recruiting rule that came out from the NCAA. Just kind of take us through with that new rule, like what exactly that is and maybe how that affects, your guys' business at Prep Baseball Report.
Right. Yeah, great question. So I'll tell you, I guess it was last week, I think, whenever that news broke of that rule, right? And I feel like for me, and I'm sure the college coaches, it was on a whole nother level, right? But I felt like for 2 or 3 days after that's what every conversation was centered around, right? Was this new rule. And, I think it's something that's important to talk about, right? Because, there's a lot of people who, maybe don't necessarily understand, how it's going to work moving forward, because it's going to work certainly, a lot differently in terms of the recruiting process for a player. And it's funny that we're talking about this because I'm just now thinking like today is the day that it goes into effect, April 26th. So, perfect timing, but basically, and I've got, I guess, like the official rule sitting here in front of me, but in a nutshell, what it is so from now on, starting today, April 26th, coaches, and players may not initiate or have contact with one another until that player gets to August 1st of their junior academic semester, right? So, that means, no contact at all, whether it's, the player calling the coach or the coach calling the player, or even, a parent calling a coach or a third party person calling a coach. Like, it's done until August 1st of your junior year, right? And it's going to be a big change because, I think me and Brandon probably talked about it on last episode a little bit, right? Like the world that we had kind of evolved into with the early college recruiting and, guys, committing before, they even stepped foot on campus in high school. Like, and I'm not here to say that it was right or wrong. I just think that this new rule is a good thing, right? And I think that, it's going to be a good thing for the schools and the players and their families as well. So I could ramble on this subject for forever, but basically it's no contact until, August 1st of that player's junior academic year. And, how is it going to affect our business and what we do? I mean, I'm not sure it necessarily changes, what we do. I think that what, PBR, does and where our place is and kind of this whole recruiting ecosystem, right? Like, I think it's going to be more valuable now, especially with, a big event to end the summer, like, the future games, right? So obviously you're familiar, how it works, but I'm sure there's people out there that don't fully understand how the future games works. But like this summer, the 2 classes that will be represented at the future games for every state will be the 2025s and the 2026s. Well, the 2025s, they'll finish with the future games on like July 29th, July 30th, and then August 1st is that first day they can start to have contact, right? So it's like, it's the perfect timing, right? If you're fortunate enough to get selected to go, like, I think it's going to think it's going to make the future games. It was already a big event. I think it just amplifies it.
Yeah.
So
basically the new ruling is kind of just putting the old ruling and just being a little bit more strict with it, correct? Because before it was
yeah,
what? September 1st of the junior year, like they couldn't have like direct contact. Like a coach had to text a college coach had to text like a travel or high school coach and be like, hey, like a player, can they call me at 7 p.m. That was kind of the way it kind of went before this new ruling, correct?
right. That's right. So before this new ruling, let's hear prime example. So like yesterday, right? A college coach could have texted, or called somebody like me or a travel coach and said, hey, have, John Smith, who's a 2025, call me at, 8 o'clock tonight, right? Like that's done now, starting today. I mean, those days are over.
Yeah. So what about all these guys? Well, okay, first off, I'm going to have two questions back to back. They're going to be kind of similar, but kind of different. So first one, I've been seeing a lot of guys, class of 25, 26. I mean, even some guys, class of 2027 these past couple of weeks, all after the new ruling came out, they're like, okay, well, I'm going to commit now. I'm going to commit now. Is there any sort of benefit for them there, or why exactly are these guys doing that? Especially with the 27s, knowing that they can't talk to their college coach now for 2.5 years until they're a junior in high school. Like, is there benefits that come with that? Or, what exactly was this whole thing of all these 25, 26, and 27s, committing in these past 2 weeks?
Right. I think there's probably a different set of circumstances for each of these kids, that have been an early commit, I guess, over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, whatever it's been since the news broke. I think a lot of them probably had received those offers, prior, maybe months ago, right? And maybe they decided, hey, that's my dream school. That's where I want to go. I'm going to lock it in now, I guess, right? Maybe there were, and I'm just kind of spitballing here, but I'm sure there were some guys who some schools were probably high on, but they had, I guess, not, put 2 feet in the water and it actually, went ahead and offered them. And, maybe I'm sure there were some offers that have gone out in the last couple of weeks as well, right? Here's what I can say, though, and I think I mentioned this on last episode, and I think maybe Brandon touched on it a little bit too. I don't know if there's necessarily a quote unquote benefit. And again, this is just my opinion. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I don't know if there's necessarily a benefit to doing it early because, I mean, what I always tell players, the ones that commit early, like it's great, right? But you have to continue to work to become the player that school projects you to be, right, by the time you get to your senior year before you head on to that college campus, right? So to me, it never mattered if you committed early or you committed later. Like, you still had to develop into this guy before you arrived on campus. If not, like, you probably, wasn't going to work out. So, not really sure if there was really a benefit to it, in my opinion. I think with this, I'll tell you this, I think what this rule is going to do is we're going to see less misses in terms of I'm just talking about high school prospects, right? Because I think by the time you get to, your junior year, you're obviously a more finished product, closer to a finished product than, when you're 14 years old as a freshman. I just think it's a whole lot easier to, project out. So I think it's going to be a good thing.
Yeah. So do you think there's going to be less college coaches at these 14, 15U and 16U events at that point? Because for the most part now, their recruiting process is only going to take part in one summer circuit during their 17U season. Is that kind of how you see that playing out as well?
God, that's a really good question. I think it remains to be seen, right, how that's going to work. I will tell you that I've spoken personally to a couple of college recruiters and have asked them that very question, right? How is your summer how's your guys' summer recruiting schedule going to change from, let's say, what it was last year to what it's going to be this summer? And, one guy told me, and it made sense to me, right? Like, this is what I would do if I was in their position is, let's say you've got a 14U, a 15U, and a 16U event on the same week, basically, same time frame. Like, I mean, you're probably going to go see that 16U event. Like, that's the class, that's the next class that you really got to worry about, right? And then some people have said, well, there's 3 guys that can get out and recruit. You can send one to the 15s and one to the 14s. Well, true, but those guys are also going to go out and, they got to go recruit like the summer collegiate leagues for guys that are in the portal, junior college guys. Like, there's just a whole lot of variables. So I think that yes, I think college recruiting is going to get more focused on kind of that next class that's about to be juniors. But they, don't get me wrong, they're still going to be building lists of the class behind that, maybe even the class behind that. But, that's about it. It's going to be building lists, right? Yeah. Will they go out and physically see him this summer? Maybe a little bit, but I tell you, it's probably going to be a lot less than it was last summer. A lot less. It's going to be really,
college recruiting may turn into like pro recruiting when it comes to schedule, because all these not pro recruiting, but pro scouting, because all those guys are going to pretty much all the 17U events and not really worrying about 14, 15, 16. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But what do you think it's going to lead to more decommitments from guys who are, let's say, been committed to whatever, let's say LSU, I'm just throwing out of school, whatever. Maybe Texas. Let's stay away from the state of Louisiana. But just for example, let's say a guy got class of 2026 or 2025. He's been committed to Texas now for 2 years. And now he can't talk to his college coaching staff for, 4 or 5 months from now in August when he hits his junior year. Like, do you think there may be some decommitments because they're not building that relationship with their coaching staff? Or what do you think is really going to happen to these 25s and 26s who have been committed here for a little bit, but now can't be talking to their coaches like they were, the past 5 months or so?
Right. Again, I'm going to go back to this, what I said earlier. I think that those 25s, 26s, even 27s, and there's probably a couple 28s out there right now that are committed. I mean, like, you just put one foot in front of the other, and you better keep working every day, to become the player that, that they project you, to be. I think if those kids do that, they'll be, just fine. Will there be some casualty? Sure. I mean, there always is, right? There's guys that just don't work for whatever reason. There's guys that just don't develop, maybe peak early, right? Like, it happens. But I mean, that's what I would say. Just keep working.
Yeah. So I know it's day 1 of this new rule, but do you see any other rules coming into an effect in the next, maybe 2 or 3 years when it comes to college recruiting?
That's a great, I know there's been talks of, the 11.7 being increased. In fact, I think they just made a rule change back in January. And don't quote me on this because I can't remember exactly, but I think the old rule was you could spread the 11.7 over 27 guys, and I think maybe now they can spread it over 32. But there's still that 25% minimum that you have to offer. So I've heard that 25% minimum could go away. So, like, for example, what that would do is before the 25% minimum rule, and I guess for fans out there that don't know, in baseball, we only get 11.7 scholarships, and a school has to offer you a minimum of 25%. There can't be anything lower than that. Before that rule was put into place, I'll give you a prime example, like where I live in Lake Charles, right at McNeese. We have some academic programs, the TOPS program in Louisiana, to where you can get a lot of your academic scholarship paid for, right? If you have good grades, a good ACT score coming out of high school. And before this 25% minimum rule, what schools like McNeese would do with local kids out of Lake Charles is, you have your TOPS that pretty much paid for all your school. And then McNeese could give you baseball money for books, right? Which is less than 25%, but it's still a scholarship, or, give you money for a meal card or whatever, to where they can't do that right now. So I'll say that I think if they're not going to do away with the 25% minimum, I mean, I don't see, if they're not going to do away with the 25% minimum, they need to find a way to increase that 11.7. I think if they did away with the 25%, it would make it a lot easier, right, for those guys to spread out that 11.7, but still probably needs to be increased. So I could see that changing, which affects college recruiting. And then, now the volunteer assistance going away, right? So there's no more volunteer. I think it'll be interesting to see how many schools, maybe, just add different types of personnel, whether it's director of ops, data analytics guys, things like that. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But look, the news that broke about a week and a half ago with this rule change that we're talking about, I mean, it's massive news that I think everybody in the baseball world has been thinking was going to come, but it finally came. And then not only did it come, they said, hey, it's going to go into effect April 26th, which was right around the corner. So.
Yeah. So I was talking to a travel baseball coach probably a month ago, and he tells me, hey, there's a new rule, be on the lookout for it. And this is exactly what it was. Before the announcement, did you have any idea that this was coming? Like, had anyone kind of told you about rumors of, NCAA is going to be changing this rule? Or was this kind of a shock for you as well? Maybe you're scrolling Twitter or something and see a link, or, however you found out.
Right. No, great. So like I said, I had heard that there was a good possibility that it was going to happen. And when I say I heard this, I heard this, 5 or 6 months ago, but I never really heard when it was going to happen. So no, I actually saw the news, but I saw Kendall Rogers tweet about it. Like, that's how I found out. I was scrolling Twitter. It was like 3 minutes ago, Kendall broke the news. I was like, oh my God, it happened. Wow. So no, that's how I found out.
Okay. All right, so segment number 2 here today. I kind of want to dig into your summer event that's going on. I know right now you guys are in round 1, round 2 of those Louisiana State playoffs. So, as you guys look forward to the spring coming to an end, having the state championship and all that, what are some of those, just summer events you guys have going on, where those are tournaments, postseason ID events, whatever they are? What are a couple of those events you guys are looking forward to?
Yeah, great question. So, I know we talked about more or less our events as a whole last episode, but yeah, talking specifically about the summer. So I think I talked a little bit about it on the last episode. We're going to hit different areas of Louisiana, on purpose, right? To try to give, kids in every part of Louisiana the best, chance to show off their skills, right? And our summer events, I'm looking at the list right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we've got 6 events total. We've got 1, 2, 3. We've got 4 just open showcase events. And then I actually have a Rising Stars event and our top prospect games. So I guess let me just go. It'll be easier for me just to go in, calendar date order. So the weekend after the high school season is done, state championships are done, which is May 20th and 21st. We're going to be at Barb High School with our Lake Charles Rising Stars ID and our Lake Charles Summer Open. So our Rising Stars ID at a high level is for 7th and 8th grade prospects. And what that helps us do is it's used as an identifier for our junior future games, selection for those teams. So then the Lake Charles Summer Open is just one of our, open showcase events, pro style showcase for, all high school classes. So after that, the following week, May 30th, I think it's a Tuesday, we'll be up at the Sterlington Sports Complex in Monroe with our Monroe Summer Open, just another open pro style showcase. Then the following week on a Tuesday, June 6th, we'll be at Tulane for our New Orleans event. Then the following week on June the 13th, we'll be at the University of Louisiana in Lafayette, which I'm really excited about because this is the 3rd summer in a row that we've had our top prospect games there. And what is our top prospect games? How does it differ from the open events I just talked about? Well, in the morning, it'll be a pro style showcase. And then in the afternoon, it'll be, gameplay, simulated game, basically scrimmages. And I'm really excited about this event because I think the last 2 years, it's been really, really good. This year, I mean, I think we're already up to like 70 kids that have registered, which is awesome because we still have, over a month and a half to go before, that event's up. So I think last year we had almost every Louisiana school there recruiting, plus a couple from Mississippi. And I think it's just going to grow and grow and grow every year, right? So that event right there is going to be, if, you're a 2025, you just finished your sophomore year, like it's a good event to try to get into. It's invite only. If you didn't get an invite, you can go on our website and request an invite. Look, I'm not perfect. It happens all the time. There's certain kids that maybe for one reason or another, or an email glitch, didn't get an invite and should have. Like, if you feel like you should get an invite, like, please request an invite. So, anyways, after that event, we have the following week, we have our Baton Rouge Summer Open at Zachary High School, just north of Baton Rouge. Again, just another open showcase event. So that's our 6 events for the summer. And then, of course, we'll finish it off with the junior feature games and future games in Georgia the last week in July. And I'll tell you, I don't want to get long-winded here, but I got to make sure I mention this. I really think that, again, like with this new recruiting rule, right? I think it's going to, one of the things it's going to do is going to allow college coaches to be a whole lot more selective and picky with what they're going to attend and recruit. And, I feel like, at least in Louisiana, I feel like across all of our PBR states, that all the state directors at the state level have really good relationships with the college, recruiting guys within their state. So I think whenever we come out with events, like, I think guys respect us enough to know that A, we're going to do a good job, and B, there's going to be really good players there. And the data that we give them is, real and impactful, and they can use it. So I think that our events, just like I mentioned earlier, like with the future game, it's only going to amplify. So I think it's going to be a great summer.
Yeah. And with that new rule, I mean, I just thought about this. The futures games now are going to be a little bit more loaded than what they ever have been, because like we've talked about, I mean, there's 25s and 26s already committed. With that new rule coming in effect and those freshmen, sophomores being uncommitted, I mean, these future games are going to be like the legit top players in those 2 classes from every state. So, I mean, that's again exciting for PBR.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because you're 100% right. It's only, like I said, it's only going to amplify, but from the state director's perspective, like you're talking about, because we have to pick the team, right? And I've had the last 2 summers I've been responsible for picking it as the state director, and the last 2 summers, you always knew that there were certain guys that you would send an invite to, and you're like, yeah, man, he's probably gonna commit, right? Like, it's probably gonna happen. And so then you kind of, maybe scramble to find, find a player to pick up or whatever. So now you're right. So, like, I think in my 26th class, okay, I think there in my state, there's like 3 guys that are committed. Everybody else is going to be available. You know what I mean? Whereas the 25 class right now for me in Louisiana, man, there are a bunch of kids that are committed that if they were uncommitted, I mean, yeah, they'd be coming to the future games. So to your point, yeah, I mean, we're gonna have the pick of the litter every year, which is awesome.
Yeah. And you talk about the top prospect games as well. I've been scrolling through, like, whether that's PBR, Michigan, Indiana, you guys down there as well in Texas, Louisiana, all the PBR states are announcing the rosters for that top prospect games. When does that whole process of selecting rosters and letting invites, how does that whole roster selection process play out for the top prospect games? And then when it does come time for the games, like, what exactly does that look like?
Yeah. So, I can't remember exactly when we started sending out invites. I want to say it was maybe a month or 4 or 5 weeks ago, we started sending them out. And, basically we just go off of our database, right? And what we do, I'm not sure if it's the same in every state. I can only speak for Louisiana, but, basically we put it in, tiers, right? Like a first batch of invites, a second batch, a third, basically. So that's how we do it. Like I said, trust me, I know there are guys that I miss. I'm not perfect. I can only be one place at one time. I wish I could be multiple places at one time, but there's guys that I miss. So there's been guys that I've received invite requests from. I'm like, God, thank God he sent me one. Like, I don't know how he slipped under the cracks, so to speak. So anyways, then once it gets to the game, to answer the second part of your question, like I said, we'll go through that pro style workout in the morning, and then in the afternoons it's gameplay, and we'll usually have 2 games. Every player will play in either game 1 or game 2, and what we really try to do is we try to keep the upperclassmen together and the underclassmen together separately. You just get a more a more realistic look. So that's usually how it goes, at least for us.
Yeah. So when you guys are working on these in-state, just summer events, I believe I saw Tulane on there, a couple other Baton Rouge, a couple other locations across the state. Where do you guys what's the strategy there when it comes to finding locations? Like, you got to make sure, okay, everyone in Northeast Louisiana has got to be covered and make sure there's an event close to them, but also down in Southwest Louisiana. How do you guys go about the location wise? I'm sure there's relationships built in there as well, but how do you guys go about the strategy of finding locations for these events?
Right. Great question. In Louisiana, like I said, I want to make sure I hit every area. And I feel like, you have North Louisiana, you got Southwest, you've got, I say Central, you've got like Baton Rouge in that area that's such a beast. And then you've got the Southeast, like the New Orleans, North Shore area. So that's kind of how I look at it as far as like target zones, if you will, like those 4 areas. And then, like you said, how do we, pick the destinations, right? Obviously, our bigger invite-only marquee events, like for us in Louisiana, our top prospect games the last 2 years, and then this summer, so it'll be 3 years in a row, we've had it at ULL. And I mean, that, if you haven't been to that facility, it's unbelievable, right? It's all turf, but just the stadium, I love everything about UL, and those guys are great to work with over there, those coaches. And then our state games in the fall. This past year, we had them at Tulane, beautiful all turf facility. This coming fall, we're having it. We're actually, I guess this is kind of, I don't know how many people know this. I guess I'm kind of spilling the news, but this coming year, our state games are going to be at Alex Box. And we're actually, for the first time ever, we're going to have Alex Box for 2 straight days. So the state games is going to be like a mega, and it's during an open recruiting period in the fall. I did that on purpose too. So that's going to be like a mega event, I feel like. But I like to get out in these different areas, right? Like, I like to get out to different parks. We want to have good relationships with everybody. I will say down in South Louisiana, weather can be unpredictable, so having turf is nice. But that's how it works. We try to get everywhere.
So before the summer gets rolling, I know we're still in the spring season, so we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
So, I believe, like you said, it's round 2 of the state playoffs right now, but let's just kind of dig into the regular season here to get started. Kind of take us through this high school season in Louisiana, maybe some, surprises, maybe some things that went according to plan that you were kind of expecting. Just kind of take us through this spring season and, maybe spotlight a couple of these top teams in the state.
Right. So I'm gonna pat myself on the back here with this one. You're gonna love this. So I'm sure you're familiar with our Power 25 rankings that I'm sure every PBR state I think does them, right?
Indiana, like so Indiana it's four classifications, so like 4A, 3A, 2A, 1A. And
right.
With 3A and 2A, like that's where the most like schools are at. So it's different. Like, I think they have 25, and then like the 4A and 1A, which are, very limited on the school size, I believe they do like top 10 or top 15. So, okay. I mean, very similar, but it's not like branded as Power 25.
Gotcha. So like in Louisiana, we did it last year. and we did it this year. So our Power 25 rankings is basically just, what we feel are the best 25 teams in the state, regardless of class. And we just jumble them all together, and we updated it weekly from the start of the regular season throughout the end of the regular season. We're not doing them now because it's playoff time. But what's cool, I looked at this the other day. So the top, and they weren't in the exact order, but the top 7 teams in our Power 25 ranking that we had whenever we first released it before week 1 of the regular season, those were those same 7 teams ended as the top 7 in our last release. Now, like I said, the order wasn't how it was, but the 7 teams are still there. And I guess kind of a recap of the regular season, I guess, as a whole. And I think I mentioned this last year when we kind of talked a little bit about our regular season coming to an end. I feel like, especially at the bigger levels, right? You're like Division I non-select and your Division I select. I think that the guys at the top, they were the guys to beat coming into the year, and they're still the same guys, now that we're at the end of the regular season into the playoffs. Yeah.
So with the playoffs, take us through round 1, maybe some of the guys who, maybe some of the studs that, went after and balled out, and then, kind of what to expect here for, round 2 coming up here this week.
Yeah, man. There's definitely one guy for sure I'll highlight. We talked about him before, and he's just been a consistent performer. A junior left-handed pitcher, Graydon Harris from Central Baton Rouge. So Central took on Zachary, which is kind of a rivalry in its own, to Baton Rouge area schools. And Graydon threw the first game and threw a complete game no-hitter against Zachary. And Central ended up winning the series 2-3 to advance to the second round. So that was a big-time performance in week 1. Looking into round 2, and I'm looking at my paper here of the matchups. When you look at the non-select Division I, right? And this is, I think we talked about this again last week. The terminology for classifications has changed this year in Louisiana. Like you mentioned, Class 5A, 4A, 3A, 2A, like that's how we used to be. But now, like, it's non-select Division I, which is essentially the highest, biggest level of schools, right? Non-select essentially means public, okay? So, in round 2, there's some interesting matchups in that division. There's one guy I definitely want to highlight from his performance in round 1 of the playoffs, and that's junior left-handed pitcher Graydon Harris out of Central Baton Rouge High School. So he got the ball in game 1 of their 3-game series against Zachary, which is there's kind of a rivalry between those two schools. And Graydon threw a complete game no-hitter against them. It was a big win, and Central actually advanced to move on to the second round. So just a big outing for the Southern Miss commit. But so when you look at, I'm looking at my paper here, when you look at round 2, there's definitely some interesting matchups. So in the non-select Division I space, which is, basically the public schools, large schools, mostly 5A, some 4A sprinkled in. Round 2, you've got the defending state champion West Monroe Rebels at home, taking on Fontainebleau. That's an interesting matchup, man, because West Monroe's the number 1 seed, Fontainebleau's the 17 seed, right? You would think there's like this big discrepancy in terms of, their teams, but Fontainebleau's got, 3 arms, that are going to go play college baseball. 2 of them are committed to Mississippi State, right? And are, into the low 90s. So, I think that's, could create a really good matchup there in Monroe. And then the next one is Live Oak versus Dutchtown. So I think Live Oak's a 5 seed, Dutchtown's a 12 seed. But I mean, these guys, man, they're district rivals. So like whatever district rival up there in like Indiana is like super, I guess, competitive and fierce. Like this is that in in that Baton Rouge area district. And then the last one I wanted to talk about in that non-select Division I is Central Baton Rouge going to Southside in Lafayette. I think Central's 11 seed, Southside's maybe a 6 seed. I don't know, man. Like I just talked about Graydon Harris. I would like my odds with him on the mound. So if Central can somehow figure out a way to take that game with Harris on the mound, we'll see. It could get interesting, and that could be an upset. But Southside's a really good team.
Yeah. So beyond those round 2 matchups, like what are you expecting for? Is it called a round 3 or the quarterfinals or whatever? What are you expecting here the next couple of weeks? Leading up to the state championship game.
Yeah, that's great question. So after this weekend, it will be the quarterfinal round or the third round. And then after that, we go into our state tournament, which is semifinals and finals, and those are one and done. In fact, you would play, you'd play your semifinal game on a Thursday and then the state championship on Saturday. So you play 2 games in a 3-day window. I guess what am I expecting? I expect, and there's some divisions that I think are more wide open than others. So I feel like in Division I non-select, like you got West Monroe, Barb, Sulphur, Sam Houston, Live Oak, like those 5 teams have St. Amant, those 6 teams have pretty much been in it all year long. It's safe to say 3 of them are going to be at the state tournament. There may be 1 wild card. I think when you look at the select Division I, which is your private bigger schools, Catholic of Baton Rouge has lost twice this year, and one was to a really good nationally ranked team out of Georgia. So, they were my number 2 ranked. They were my 2nd ranked team coming into the year, and I don't think they've fallen out of the top 5 all year, and they're just they're loaded with pitching depth. So I think in that division, somebody's gonna have to get hot at the right time, I feel like, to take down Catholic. So just to run through a couple more real quick, non-select Division II, you got the defending state champs in Lutcher. They've got the best sophomore in the state, the LSU commit, Marshall Luke, excuse me. He was a future gamer last summer. They're going to be tough to beat. And then you got North Vermilion, who won that state title 2 years ago and was a state runner-up last year. Like, I think it's going to come down to one of those 2 teams. And then on the select side in Division II, you've got St. Louis Catholic, the 1 seed, and St. Thomas More, the 3 seed. I like those 2 teams' chances. Now, like I said, it does get interesting in some of these other, lower level divisions, even the non-select Division III. You got Kinder, who's a 1 seed, South Bow's the 2, Sterlington's the 4 seed, and then Berwick at the 5. Like, I like that group of teams. Then you move to the select side of Division III, the private schools. This is one of the most, in my opinion, this could be one of the most wide open ones. So you got St. Charles at the 1 seed, been really good all year, really good, solid program. But then you got U High in the 8 seed, which they could play St. Charles in the quarterfinals. You got Parkview Baptist at the 5 and Dunham at the 4 seed. I mean, those are 2 Baton Rouge area rivalry private school. They could play each other in the quarterfinals. And then you've also got Notre Dame, Calvary Baptist, Holy Savior, Menard, all really, really good programs. That's going to be an interesting division. And then lastly, another wide open one, I think, is going to be that select Division IV. So you've got Ouachita Christian, Opelousas Catholic, St. Fred's, Glenbrook, Ascension Catholic. Those are all very good teams, another wide open division. So, should be interesting.
Yeah, and I guess by the time the next episode airs, we'll probably be talking about that state championship game. So I'm excited to hear who ends up making it there. So
I was actually, it's funny. I was actually going to tell you. So the one thing that I do really love about Louisiana high school baseball and the way the LHSA sets up the state tournament, right? So is like I told you, you basically you play your semifinal game on a particular day, and then you rest a day, then the next day you're playing the state finals if you want.
Yeah.
It's one and done. What's even cooler about it is, see, last year they had the select schools play at different sites, right? Well, this year we're going back to everybody's going to be in Sulphur, Louisiana, which is like a 5-minute drive from my house. And it's literally, I can go see, or our staff can go see the semifinals and finals of every classification all at the same park. It's awesome. It's a cool experience. So I was actually going to tell you that, I feel like once that state tournament sets, so after the quarterfinal rounds, yeah, it'd probably be a good time to preview, the state tournament. There'll be a ton to talk about for sure.
I'm sure. And, I guess what is it? Maybe a week, 2 weeks from now, we'll be talking about it. But
Yeah.
beyond anything that we've talked about today, maybe something else you want to add in, or, you're good to go for the week.
Yeah, no, good to go, man. I just look forward, I guess, to seeing everybody at the ballpark. Like I said, it's playoff time, man. It's fun because it's just fun talking to people around the state about playoffs. You can just tell it doesn't matter, right? If you're a 1 seed and you're playing a 16 set, like there's a certain the intensity level has been raised, right? And nobody's leaving any stone unturned. And it's for all the marbles. So it's a good time of year.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it today for episode number 2 of Prep Baseball Report Southern Showdown. We appreciate all of you guys listening here today and hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to follow at JKR_baseball, follow at PBR_Texas and at PBR_Louisiana on Twitter and on Instagram to follow for more on this on Southern Showdown and on the podcast. Just for any more updates there. But again, just thank you guys all for listening, and thanks Alex for coming on the show today.
Yep. Thank you, guys. Thought it was good.